This trade has to be a joke, right? A recent report has come out detailing one deal which the Dodgers are linked in regarding Sandy Alcantara. But what is in this proposed deal is genuinely insane. We're going to be breaking it down here, going over, as you see, why Dave Roberts will be absolutely pissed off at this deal, including multiple other updates here from the latest news with the Los Angeles Dodgers. But like I said, before we do jump in, I'll ask you guys one favor, and that's if you haven't already, be sure to hit the sub button. Join us here on the channel. We're covering everything Dodgers, and we have a lot of stuff that you will not want to miss over the next coming days and weeks. But we need to jump straight into this, and bear with me, because this deal blows my mind. I'll start this off. I don't know how the Dodgers would even consider this in the first place, let alone Sleeper Marlins tweeting this out. Yahoo Sports' Garrett Kerman proposed a trade that would send the Marlins starting pitcher Sandy Alcantara to the Dodgers. The Dodgers receive Alcantara. The Marlins receive Zaire Hope, Eduardo Quintero, Mike Sirota, and Alex Freeland. They say at the end, seems almost like a no-brainer for Miami if this is the case. And that is facts, because it's a no-brainer for Miami. It would be probably the worst deal for the Dodgers in history if this were to go through. Now, a couple of years ago, when you saw prime Sandy Alcantara, maybe that was the case. And although Sandy Alcantara has been linked multiple times to all the top teams across the MLB over the past couple of seasons, nothing should ever come from it, especially as of late. And although he is a good pitcher at times, the last few seasons that we've seen him pitch, especially this most recent one, after he did come back from Tommy John, that really negated any opportunity the Dodgers would go and even consider Sandy here in this case. And I'll pull up right now a Savant. As you see, he was god-awful. He was absolutely abysmal. The velo was there, 97.4, which I guess is a good sign coming off Tommy John, but the fact that everything else is down really below the 30th percentile, I could even really almost go 25th percentile, the concept and, kind of the materialization of that trade proposal is absolutely abysmal. And I think that is the only way to describe this. Now, you do see, in 2022 with a 2.28 ERA, I believe that was the Cy Young year, or, one of those years where he was in consideration for it. You probably just saw a cut there. I just wanted to fact check. It was his Cy Young year, so obviously you saw what he was able to do then, and then trade rumors started to kind of go from there, especially in 2023 when he did drop off a little bit, a 7-12 record, a 4.14 ERA with a 1.21 WHIP. But even then, the thought that someone could turn him around, get him back to where he was there, and ultimately we saw how 2024 went. Injury, Tommy John out, and came back this year, and really was not at all what people were projecting him to be, after his comeback, even though it wasn't supposed to be necessarily a super quick, hot comeback, but it was really, outside of all expectations that what he could have been, what he once was going to come back. And that's where we find ourselves now, when if you had to look at this trade once again, maybe in 2022, then you maybe consider it. Even then, you need to put some very careful thought behind it, because look what you're giving up. You're giving up 4 of the MLB, top, I always call it top 70 prospects here. And they're all in the Dodgers, of course, from this trade. But you're looking at this as something that would be helping out now over the next 2 years, especially when you go and really take a look and dive into what the contract for Sandy is. And this year currently going on is going to be $17 million in 2026. Next year's a club option. Then he's a UFA. So trading those 4 players for what would likely be a rental, with especially already how busy the Dodgers rotation is and how good it is, Sandy really wouldn't even be in the top 5 options, maybe even top 6 for this rotation had a trade go down. So this seems like a very heavy bias towards a Marlins trade that, of course, these fans we've seen are kind of stuck back a couple years ago and stuck in the past when you see one good player on that team He's not as good anymore, and they're still thinking that he is at least somewhat capable of, coming back to it, and that still is up in the air for what the future holds for Sandy here in this case. But like I said, I mean, even just looking at the entire what the MLB.com's rotation is for the Dodgers, I find it tough to see Alcantara here within, the bottom three players on this, and I think Emmett Sheehan, Gavin Stone, River Ryan, I would definitely consider those three even over Sandy here in this case. So if that didn't really kind of show and emphasize how bad of a trade this is, just looking at the rotation and even considering Sandy in this is a very tough ask for at least any Dodgers fan who watched the past couple of seasons. And I want to point this out as well. I don't think this trade is fully something that the Dodgers would say, shut the door on immediately. There would be some interest, of course, knowing that what you can get out of Sandy Alcantara is good, is very, very good. And at his prime, you see him in 2022, that Cy Young year. Like I said, the stats, 2.28 ERA, and even the years before that where you get a 3.19, a 3 ERA. The record wasn't great, but the Marlins were never really that good. But the way you see his stats play out and how his tenure over those seasons that really led them to get quite a few wins and at least held them in some games, that has to be in the back of the mind of some Dodgers parts of the organization. However, not at all considering any of these four players here or anybody else within the top margin of prospects for this Dodgers team. So I think the idea could certainly remain that this is a possibility of having some very, very cheap trade to get Sandy, but other than that, I think there's no way you can really even consider it, and especially when you're looking at these five players here in specific, but I would even continue probably down to 7 or 8 in the prospect list of not trading with, at least right now, the Marlins for Sandy Alcantara. So kind of going into that, you get the idea of what other teams across the MLB are also trying to do with this tweet here from Fireside Yankees. They know they're desperate. We know they're desperate, and going for one pair, they have Sandy as an option, even with Kyle Tucker. I mean, that really negates what Kyle Tucker would do. You have him go out and hit 2 bombs a game. You're seeing Sandy let up 2 or 3 or 4 bombs a game, completely making this Dodgers team laughable in free agency, or this Yankees team, laughable in free agency compared to what we know the Dodgers can do, and the process of choosing to not get someone bad at baseball. I think that's pretty well sums it up here on this side of things, and especially kind of in the more recent memory of the most recent year in Miami. I'll pull this up on the big one before we do finish this video off. I mean, you'll look last year, like going back 3 years' time, 2023, 2022, certainly was an option. 2023 did a bit of a drop-off. 24 didn't play. 2025, a 5.36 ERA. A 1.27 whip. Not the worst of his career, but the worst ERA by far. There can be some success, but the ERA is not at all what the Dodgers are looking for. They want someone who can come in and shut things down and let their bullpen go to work. They don't want someone who's going to only be able to pitch a couple innings before the rotation, before the order comes back around and you have to take him out. So, like I said, Sandy, I think, is a very slim possibility. However, it wouldn't even be considered to have any of these players involved in this deal. This deal is just mind-bogglingly bad, especially when it comes down to not just who the Dodgers are getting in most recent memory, but also what they're giving up. Crazy, crazy work to even consider these 4 players, let alone one of them. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to know what you guys think about this trade. Would you trade for Sandy? And I think that's something I want to know. But not using those players. Would you like to trade for Sandy? Would you like to see Sandy on the Dodgers if it did come at a very cheap price? But that's what I want to know in the comments below. Give me a Y for yes and N for no. But that is all I have here in this video. If you did enjoy it, give it a like. Hit the sub button as well. I'm signing out, though. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day, ladies and gentlemen. See you later.